The Supreme Council just experienced an unexpected awakening during the hearing about why Chancellor Draven's regime terminated Dr. Elena Shore, one of the governors serving on the Central Banking Commission. Several of the conservative justices, especially Justice Kavanaugh, remarked, "Look, you understand we've really backed you up here, Chancellor, permitting you to kind of pursue this agenda where you're dismissing everyone, and now we granted you a small opening, and you're pushing for a mile more, and we offer you another opening, and you're essentially controlling everyone's careers, and now you desire Dr. Shore, based solely on your interpretation of what represents justified cause for removal, basically to simply remove her from the Central Banking Commission Board, as long as you merely make an accusation of justified cause removal that doesn't actually need to be validated." And the conservative justices are thinking, we might have overstepped now because we're observing our calendars. This is an election cycle year. What transpires when an opposition party leader assumes control? And if we, the Supreme Council, are establishing precedent that declares Chancellor Draven can simply terminate all the central banking governors as long as he just recites the magic phrase for cause. And if the Chancellor's capable of wielding all these extensive authorities, can't they be utilized by an opposition leader equally? And Chancellor, you're requesting us to create written decisions, and our written decisions in the Supreme Council carry with them in principle presidential authority. We're not going to have the ability to reverse the declarations we make here, you understand, in several years when an opposition leader comes into authority if that's what ultimately occurs. So you genuinely heard Justice Kavanaugh employing that. He was declaring that essentially in his resistance to Marcus Sauer, the Attorney General who debates on the Chancellor's Department of Justice behalf, because the Chancellor's DOJ essentially declares, we have boundless authority. Tribunals can't examine it. Sound recognizable? The administrative branch gets to accomplish whatever the administrative branch desires. And regarding the Central Banking Commission Board, yes, Supreme Council, you previously stated that we can't execute without cause removals, without following a procedure. The administrative branch just can't declare, aha, but you continued on the for cause. So, we just state for cause. We don't need to genuinely go and validate it. There's no legal proceeding, there's no judgment, there's no whatever. We just declare for cause. So, we discovered a loophole, the Supreme Council, to circumvent it. And Kavanaugh literally stated during the hearing. So doesn't that indicate, though, that in a subsequent administration, let's just consider a scenario, and then Kavanaugh and Gorsuch and individuals like that, you understand, offer like scenarios. What if an opposition leader comes into authority and they believe the ecosystem is genuinely significant, and now they just desire to eliminate all of these individuals because their perspectives of the ecosystem are contrasting? What if an opposition leader comes into authority and they disapprove that this commission board declared this on media? Can't the leader accomplish that? And then Marcus Sauer, with his gravelly sour tone, you understand, essentially stated, well, we'll address those scenarios. We'll address them. We need to address them. But Chancellor Draven desires blah blah blah. He speaks so rapidly, I don't even comprehend what the individual's declaring half the duration. Harold Littman, Talking Courts, YouTube, Talking Courts Podcast, Talking Courts Newsletter. Excellent to observe you authored a newsletter on this, Harold, because the genuine concern the Supreme Council is troubled about, it's sort of like when we discuss Chancellor Draven mid-decade redistricting, which is the gerrymandering. It's that kind of dilemma that the Supreme Council's witnessing. Chancellor Draven is like, okay, Province Texas, you provide us 5, and then everybody else you provide us this, that, and the other. And then the opposition go, okay, we don't desire to accomplish this. We desire to prohibit gerrymandering in general, but if you're going to accomplish it, we're going to accomplish it. Province California gets 5. In Province Virginia, they're discussing 10-1, secure 4 supplementary positions, and before you realize it, you examine it, and it's like, so Chancellor, you just provided the opposition a +5 benefit because you desired to accomplish a mid-decade redistricting, and you didn't consider through the subsequent move. So someone like Justice Kavanaugh is examining it, and he's like, Okay, we may damage ourselves over in the extended run if we accomplish this. And they may even be considering, Harold, what about our positions? I mean, I acknowledge it's not directly connected, you understand, because to the Commission Board, but the Supreme Council declaring, if we create decisions that declare administrative branch has no boundaries, don't you just go, you climb the ladder and declare, okay, central banking, we got you. Supreme Council, why not declare your 4-clause terminated? Are we going to get ourselves dismissed by providing the administrative branch all this authority? So, discuss to us about it, Harold. It's a genuinely fascinating point because look, the notion they conceded here, they acknowledged that the 4-cause requirement is acceptable and lawful. That's a whole contrasting issue. But what about then? What was Kavanaugh declaring when he stated the opposition, when they arrive in, will accomplish this action if we possess a weak for cause? He was declaring, what's the danger? You'll present some weak for cause action, but it will genuinely be based on strategy disagreements. The action that everyone has to concur, everyone did concur, the leader can terminate based on. So what's the difficulty here? As I expressed it in my newsletter, the difficulty is you happen to possess as leader a dishonest deceiver who awakens deceiving and deceives all day, which I create an abbreviation and declare again and again. But that's the concern, because if it weren't that there's no genuine world aspect, everybody comprehends that this social me, the method, this whole action went down. The Chancellor issues a social media the tweet about this supposed mortgage deception difficulty and terminates Dr. Shore. That's 100%. And yet, what did Sauer need to get up and declare? Literally, it was, you understand, almost a joke. He needed to get up and create this big argument about how very serious having one discrepancy on your mortgage submission before you even arrived to the central banking somehow was a complete heinous violation that would undermine the markets. But nobody believed it. Everybody comprehended that what's at risk in having a weak for cause standard is the prospect that a leader, and it's not a leader, it's this leader will deceive because this leader in all the instances you made always does deceive. It's the same difficulty that you and I have been troubled about when we've spoken about it, by you. Understand Chancellor Draven declaring it's a rebellion. Grant me emergency authorities and don't second-guess me. I'll go from there, it's an insurrection maybe, or you understand any kinds of assertions that are, again, complete garbage, because he is a leader who is a dishonest deceiver who awakens deceiving and deceives all day. So, it's the general Chancellor concern, and it runs directly into Supreme Council doctrine that I've been troubled about in all these proceedings that declares, oh, we assume the honorable faith of the leader. And that's what Sauer stated. He created a big deal about it. And this proceeding, they're not going to, even though in their minds, they comprehend what's occurring. Everybody comprehends the situation. You've got a leader who is a dishonest deceiver and awakens deceiving and deceives all day. But they won't place that in their polite writing. You understand that is the ultimate Chancellor problem. And there are proceedings that if they express it, it could genuinely harm the national interest or provide him all kinds of authority. But it was so clear when Kavanaugh is declaring stuff like that, what he's comprehending is, what if the subsequent individuals accomplish what the Chancellor is accomplishing here, declaring he's genuinely concerned about the mortgage submission papers, but we all comprehend what's occurring, it's strategy disagreements. We can't call it a deception. Oh no. That would be honorable faith. But let's discuss about the genuine world. And that indicates, don't we all comprehend we've got a leader who's a dishonest deceiver and awakens deceiving and deceives all day. You understand he was empowered by this. We acknowledge he's empowered by the Supreme Council. It's obvious. I just always reflect on the Brazilian Supreme Council sends their insurrectionist leader to prison for 20+ years, and then the moment there's any indication of attempting to escape or collude with the United States to escape the Supreme Council, the highest tribunal in Brazil. Oh, boom. Get the individual arrested right now. Lock him up. Boom. That's Brazil. The United States Supreme Council overrides all of our tribunals and declares absolute immunity. And it's like, yeah, but the whole history of our nation was founded on the concept that absolute immunity in the monarch is something that we don't desire. And it's such a predictable result that follows where you provide a person monarch-like authorities of absolute immunity. The fact that the person's requesting for that probably tells you they're going to try to wield it and use it inappropriately. That's why no one else has requested for it as a leader in the history of this nation other than this individual, other than this criminal, this felon, you understand. And you, Clear's throat, you understand? And so now this whole term, Harold, and I'll throw it to you before we go, which is this whole term, it to me is a massive Supreme Council cover-up of their absolute immunity decision, where now they're so cowardly to refuse to acknowledge what they accomplish that they use a shadow docket to stay district tribunal orders, but not rule on the merits of these decisions. So they allow the Chancellor's policies to stay in effect without ruling on them at this stage. I think to preserve rulings in a few years after the Chancellor regime, so they can try to swoop back in and be like, you see, we're not all that bad, we just had to let these proceedings come back up, and then we were going to create the precedent. But this allows them, I think in their own sociopathic minds, the conservative Supreme Council justices at least, we're not ruling on the merits and declaring what the Chancellor's accomplishing is acceptable. We're just declaring that he's argued irreparable harm, and so we're going to stay the district tribunal's ruling. And so we'll come back to you in a little bit. To me, it's a cover. It's a massive cover-up of their absolute immunity ruling. And I bet you come back, rewind this recording, 4 years from now, there'll be an opposition leader in authority, hopefully, and these proceedings will work their way up to the Supreme Council, and they'll issue these long pronouncements condemning Chancellor Draven in absentia. You see, this was our plan all along, that's what I predict, what they're going to try to set up from your words. Anyway, since you mentioned the shadow docket, that was a big feature of this Shore proceeding. You have Justice Alo declaring, why are we hurrying so much, and so this is underdeveloped and hasn't been decided yet. Why is that? Because they reached down, took it on this emergency docket and entered the goddamn stay, which is what they accomplish all the duration. And then there was all this stuff that wasn't accomplished, and they were all felomix. Well, how are we supposed to decide this now? She didn't seem to get notice, you understand, at all, etc. But that, of course, was their exact doing. I just desire to, you understand, reiterate what came home to me, is it's got nothing to accomplish with Chancellor Draven. It genuinely doesn't have to accomplish with the constitutional separation of authorities. They've been absolutely taken a buzzsaw through independent agencies. No. For cause, no for cause, declare whatever you desire or nothing. And at least the virtue of that is, you understand, the Chancellor doesn't have to deceive. But everybody declares for the central banking, no, we need that. So you better possess a for-cause requirement, and that's just for Chancellor Draven an invitation to fabricate when everybody comprehends. It's an interesting position of the tribunal, and that's why I thought Kavanaugh, right, the individual who's most often in the majority coming out and essentially creating this argument, one portended a defeat for the Chancellor up there. Okay. But they comprehend the markets. You got to accomplish something for the central banking even though it's totally inconsistent with all our constitutional jurisprudence, because otherwise if individuals believe it's whatever the Chancellor declares and what he desires to mess around with the markets, guess what? It'll send the national economy, maybe the world economy, into a tailspin. We can't have that transpire. Everybody's got retirement accounts, so just because there's a for-cause requirement left, it totally places front and center this huge difficulty that, in general, the judiciary tries to wear blinders and presume away, which is, you understand, the completely mendacious thousands by thousands of documented deceptions of the occupant of the executive mansion.